Shalom everyone, it's your boy PayGdashtheprophet. My new lesson, Who is the White Man, is now ready. At least part 1 is. It's about 2 hours and 30 minutes long. This lesson will be about 5 hours long because I'm still doing part 2. But so far part 1 is done. 2 hours and 30 something minutes long. Okay.
So you can find in people of European and Asian ancestry evidence of about 7%, 5 to 10% of your genome is common with that of Neanderthals. We've been separated from them for 30,000 years or so.
Scientists have found that most of us still have a little bit of a Neanderthal inside us. A study into the DNA of the human subspecies found that they interbred with modern humans tens of thousands of years ago, and their genetic mark remains today. BBC's Palab Ghosh has more on these extraordinary findings.
This is a skull of a modern human, and this is from a Neanderthal. Look closely and you can see that this one has a slightly longer brain case. Most scientists believe that these are two separate species and there wasn't much interaction between the two. But now we know there was interbreeding and that all non-Africans living today are part Neanderthal. They found that the DNA of Europeans and Asians is 2% Neanderthal.
It's a very exciting discovery because it gives us really the first strong evidence that there was interbreeding with people like the Neanderthals. And it means that modern humans in different parts of the world may have slightly different mixes.
Further analysis should give a greater insight into how Neanderthals lived and shed more light on our own early origins. Palab Ghosh, BBC News.
And the Neanderthal in me has always said, Neanderthal, I stand quite...
I wasn't aware that I'd have any Neanderthal in me.
Really, dude?
Although
Look at
probably
you.
some of my friends and family would disagree.
I come out as quite Neanderthal. I was quite surprised. Dad said that my mum is a bit short and stocky, so he imagines that the Neanderthal side of the family is definitely hers.
They're saying Homo sapiens mated with Neanderthals, and the offspring was this hybrid of the two, and as time has gone on, the Neanderthal DNA has diluted a little. But it's the Neanderthal DNA that gives white people their straight thin hair, their lack of melanin, and so forth. The fact that when the traveling Homo sapiens arrived into Europe, that they encountered thousands of white-skinned Neanderthals that had already been living in Europe for 80,000 years, according to studies. They always knew this. They always knew that there were Neanderthals in these mountains or all over Europe that had been there for 80,000 years, right? Furthermore, these white-skinned Neanderthals shared physical resemblances to modern white people. So according to the latest DNA researchers, these early Neanderthals had white skin, blue eyes, green eyes, red and blonde recessive hair. Therefore, modern Caucasians look more like their Neanderthal ancestors than they presently do to modern Africans. Even their bone structure is more similar to Neanderthals than modern-day Africans.
As it turned out, I had no Neanderthal ancestry at all. Now, actually, with a retrospectroscope, I think maybe it would have been nice to have a bit.
Because you destroyed.
The Africans who came out from Africa have no evidence of any Neanderthal genes in them. No evidence of admixture. So they're the real pure humans. Homo sapiens. Really, really interesting, and it gives you a lot to think about.
Now, please don't get albinoism confused, okay? African albinos do not have Neanderthal DNA. They are not the same as white people. They are black. They are negroid, but they have a melanin deficiency, which makes them lose their color in their hair, eyes, skin, which also gives them some medical conditions. And you can find all of this information and more in so much more depth online.
But without further ado, I'm going to show you my Neanderthal report and the overview here. I was super shocked at this result. I expected like 2.5%, but it is 3.39% Neanderthal. So I'm basically a caveman, which is really mind-blowing to me. It's really cool that, Neanderthals kind of live on through me and my DNA. Obviously, my ancestors like to get freaky with the Neanderthals.
For all of you saying that the so-called white man is your brother Esau, here you go. I guess you're related to Neanderthals. How does that sound? So we have our first book here, Basic Concepts in Anthropology. Okay, Kenneth A.R. Kennedy, Neanderthal man.
They engineered us.
Woohoo! All right, so it's not just what the scientists are saying, but now we have, scholarship we can actually look at. Since the time when a fossilized human skeleton was recovered from a quarry in the Neander Valley of Western Germany. Germans. Their time has come. Neanderthal. Now, this book is going to connect to a movie called The Wrong Turn. So as I'm reading, I'll show some connections to it, but I'm just going to bring out a little bit from this book, okay? He felt along the path with his feet as he climbed. The attack came quickly. He had no time to react. He felt a crashing blow on his head.
Pull me up!
On his head, he was carried off into the night. Find this eerie connected with this movie. Scroll down a bit. November 8th, a 24-year-old woman from Surrey, England, who was part of an upward and outward group climbing Mount Askazi, was found dead last week. Locals tell stories of mountain men. Mountain men. Also, I want to make a connection back to something I did in Esau Part 6. I had brought out the movie Prometheus.
What happened to that man?
That God is different than us. That God is different than us. That God is different than us.
This is another throwback just to make some connections here. I just want to show this real quick and then we can really get into this lesson. All right, so let's bring that out.
They engineered us. They engineered us.
I'm fairly certain your engineers are nothing but scribblings of savages living in dirty little caves.
Section of the Neander Valley Cave. Yeah, they came from the caves. All right.
Congratulations on meeting your maker.
Thank you.
So this is their engineers. These giants.
This is the skull of a modern human, and this is from a Neanderthal. Look closely and you can see that this one has a slightly longer brain case. Most scientists believe that these are two separate species, and there wasn't much interaction between the two. But now we know there was interbreeding, and that all non-Africans living today are part Neanderthal.
Now let's see what their genetics come up with.
Genetic view.
Okay.
Let's have a look at his DNA.
DNA. Match.
They're showing you and telling you everything that I've been explaining to y'all and showing y'all that they come from the seed of the fallen. These Neanderthals, these giants.
I have proof.
Their genetic material predates ours. We come from them. We come from them.
They're showing you that their DNA comes from them. This is what they're showing you. But check this out.
Guess you can take your father's cross off now.
Why would I want to do that?
Because they made us. Because they made us.
So now, the Europeans that are in America today, because these Europeans, quote unquote, these white people say, oh, I'm American. Well, where did you come from? And their typical story is that they come from Europe, going back to the Pilgrims and stuff of that matter. Their story, what they teach, meaning this is what they believe. Their story is coming from Europe on ships and stuff like that to the Americas. So I want to just bring that out real quick so we can understand the psyche and the mind frame of these people and what, once again, what they're saying out their mouth. It is not what the biblical Esau story is. Okay? So let's get that real quick and then we're going to jump in.
Our money man, Paul Solomon, looks at those original Thanksgiving celebrants, the Pilgrims, and the economic pressures that drove them to America and defined so much of their time here. It's part of our weekly series, Making Sense, which airs every Thursday on the NewsHour.
Thanksgiving time at Plymouth Plantation, a 17th century living history museum in Massachusetts. The year, 1624, when, as the story goes,
100 people landed on a bare and windy shore, seeking freedom from the English church. For this, they were ready to confront the grim and grisly face of poverty.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
We've long celebrated the religious drive to build a city on a hill for strangers in a strange land. But it turns out that our pilgrims faced poverty at least as grim and grisly back in Holland, from whence they'd fled 16 years earlier to separate from the Church of England. Patience Prince was among those who came to Plymouth, as played here by one of the plantation's reenactors.
Here we live a humble life, but we work for ourselves. In Holland, we could put food on our tables, but it was a very hard labor.
Meanwhile, America was literally, to them, a new world.
We will be able to turn a good profit so that it benefits everyone.
The plantation's governor and chronicler, William Bradford.
It might be a place where profit and religion can jump together. There is no shame in doing well, for one must still exist in this world and thus be comfortable.
Stephen Hopkins was a merchant colonist.
Will you become rich, do you think?
Well, I imagine all men entertain the idea of it, but, well, that really shall be not up to me. It is hoped that we'll at least prosper.
Most of the Pilgrims had been farmers in England, but made their living in the cloth trade in Holland. When the wool market crashed, these folks were desperate to emigrate.
They were living in deep privation, and it was a way of escaping poverty.
Plymouth historian Richard Pickering.
So was the main motivation really what we would now call economic?
There is a religious motivation in the desire to protect the church, but those that were living in Holland were safe, so that they could have remained and worshipped as they wanted, but it is an economic motivation to better the lives of their children and grow the number of church members.
In other words, the Pilgrims were very much economic immigrants, like so many who've come to America since.
So we clearly see what they're saying. As I said, the Europeans that came from Europe here to America, their children are now calling themselves Americans, but they're really immigrants, which is really funny today. It's ironic. And, and they're prejudiced against everyone else that's coming here, but, you don't belong here either. But anyways, we see their story. We see what they're saying. If you want to get more into it, you can always look into that story with the Pilgrims and all of these type of things and stuff like that. That's their story. That is their story. Okay, so now I want to get into the scriptures about who these European people are and who dwelt in Europe and stuff like that. So we're going to start with Genesis. Okay, Genesis chapter 10. Sons of Japheth, or Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, Meshet. These were the isles of the Gentiles. These were called the Gentiles. This seed, Japheth's seed, these were called the Gentiles, the isles of the Gentiles. Have to understand that when understanding biblical language and who these characters are. Okay, divided in their lands with an S, meaning countries. Okay, divided in their countries, everyone after his tongue. So they all had different tongue, meaning different languages. Okay, after their families and their nations. And the sons of Japheth, the son of Noah, went and built themselves cities in the places where they were scattered. This was after the Tower of Babel. Okay. And they called all their cities, see, they were scattered. Keep that in mind. They called all their cities after their names. You see that? They called their cities after their names. They were the ones doing the naming. You're going to learn that later on in this lesson. And the sons of Japheth were divided upon the face of the earth in many divisions. Okay. The sons of Japheth were divided upon the face of the earth in many divisions and languages. That did not happen with Esau. So when we say, oh, Esau is this one, and Esau is that one, and Esau is that one, do you not know about the seed of Japheth? Flavius Josephus, who was a Hebrew Israelite. Okay, we're going to confirm what we just read in Genesis chapter 10, dealing with the seed of Japheth. Japheth, the son of Noah, had 7 sons. They inhabited so that beginning at the mountain Taurus and Amanus, they proceeded along Asia as far as the river Tanis and along Europe. Hello. Seed of Japheth had nothing to do with Esau going into Europe. From Babylon to Timbuktu. All right. The third classification of mankind was the Japhites from Japheth, who was the youngest son of Noah. The offspring of Japheth occupied the Isles of the Gentiles. So as you see, Rudolph Windsor in his book, he understands that seed coming from the seed of Japheth. Okay, Japheth's grandson, Ashkenaz, formed the Germanic race, as we were reading about the Neanderthals being in Germany and even in these other places, but we know here we're dealing with Germans, the Germanic race. Anomalistic history. All right. See, this is how you do your research, man. Okay, the Neanderthal people who lived throughout Europe, and we know that's where Japheth's seed went, but Japheth and his sons as the portion of his inheritance which he should possess for himself and his sons for their generations forever. 5 great islands, Isles of the Gentiles, and a great land in the north. Verse 30. But it is cold. You see that? But it is cold. This is key to look at and to examine, because this cold climate can cause mutations.
Well, if you make the assumption that the human race arose like around the equator and that skin color, dark skin color would be the phenotype, then are you assuming that as people moved outward, there was a mutation, and if you were in the north, it allowed that mutation to live, which is how we got white people?
Yes.
Would that follow?
Yeah. If
Scientists and anthropologists have found different kinds of mutations in certain parts of the world. A physical mutation is a sudden variation or change, the offspring differing from its parents in some outstanding characteristic. And this is what it goes into, the Neanderthals and their offspring, and white people having their DNA today. Major mutations or changes took place among the descendants of Japheth. Remember, they were in cold climate. You can refer back to my Esau lessons and stuff like that, where I brought a lot of this information out. This is obvious because of their white skin. So the brother is not saying that Esau is the white man. He's telling you that it's the seed of Japheth. This is a #1 seller among the Hebrew Israelite community. #1 seller. Lost tribes in the promised land. All right. Not that all Arab-colored prejudice was directed against blacks. Pale-skinned northerners, okay? Chalky-faced Gauls, all right, from the barbarian tribes, okay? An 11th century writer of Toledo observed that the cold northern climate was what made peoples like the Slavs and Bulgars, okay? Hence the derivation of our word Slav, pale of color, linked here. Right, here we go, the Ancient Black Hebrews, Volume 2, brought this out before. The forensic proof, simply explained. Here are skulls of a Caucasian, Negroid, and East Asian. All right, you see the differences. These two look similar. This one is elongated, the nose is narrow. Okay. The differences in appearance between people indigenous to Europe, East Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa are due to climate adaptation. All right. Climate adaptation. We know Japheth's seed was in a colder climate. Japheth's seed being a nation before Esau was born. I brought this out in Esau part 7, but I have to bring it out in this lesson here so that those that are watching can understand, and I'm going to make some slight connections. In those days, in the 91st year of the life of Abraham, the children of Chittim or Kittim made war with the children of Tubal. Now, these are the children of Japheth, okay, fighting with each other.
If you know the history of the whole concept of the white race, where it came from and for what reason, you know that it was a trick and it's worked brilliantly. See, prior to the mid to late 1600s in the colonies of what would become the United States, there was no such thing as the white race. Those of us of European descent did not refer to ourselves by that term really ever before then. In fact, in the old countries of Europe, we had spent most of our time killing each other. We didn't love each other. We weren't one big happy family. The side of my family that comes from Scotland, hell, they didn't even worry about fighting people outside of Scotland. Highlanders and lowlanders just fought the hell out of each other.
Okay, fighting with each other. And the children of Chittim are the Romans who dwelled in the valley of Canopia by the river Tiber, right? Same thing. Let's make a connection to the book Neanderthal Man. So just making a connection here in Neanderthal Man with this seed of Japheth dwelling by the river Tiber. Okay, dealing with these Neanderthals and how they mixed. Again, this is more confirmation and connection. It was within the third interglacial, all right, glacial ice age of 150,000 to 70,000 years ago that we can with confidence identify specimens as Neanderthals. Some These are from the Italian sites of Sacapastor, a river deposit on a tributary of the Tiber near Rome. And as we saw in the scripture, this is where this is where Japheth's seed dwelt and lived. Okay? Neanderthals, Ice Age, it was cold. Mutation, hello. You gotta wake up, man. So now, in this section, we're going to deal with language, okay? We're going to deal with language and make some connections, some distinctions, so we can understand truth. This was the time of Abraham, okay? The revival of Hebrew. And I opened his mouth and his ears and his lips, and I began to speak with him in Hebrew. Most High didn't do this with all people. Abraham called Ishmael and his 12 children and Isaac and his 2 children, which was Jacob and Esau, and Keturah's 6 children and their sons. So Abraham called them all. But we see he spoke with them. He sat them all down and spoke with them. In Hebrew, he talked with them. Okay? Esau can speak Hebrew. Can the white man speak Hebrew? No. No. So, Esau can speak Hebrew, knows Hebrew, would be able to speak in that tongue. Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom. Thus saith thy brother Israel. They were brothers, brethren, okay, twins, coming from the same mother. And Edom saith unto him, thou shalt not pass by me, lest I come out against thee with the sword. Okay, because they live by the sword, the literal sword. All right, so we see there was communication between the two. They can communicate because they spoke Hebrew, this Semitic tongue. But let's make the connection, bring it out. I made this connection before here in the book History of the Arabs. Oh, you see, you saw the Arabs? Am I? Okay, the Jews were geographically next door neighbors of the Arabians, hello, and racially their nearest of kin. Echoes of the desert origin of the Hebrews abound in the Old Testament. Hebrew and Arabic, as we have learned before, are cognate Semitic tongues. Okay, and not English tongues. Some of the Hebrew Old Testament names are Arabic. Okay, those of almost all of Esau's sons. So Esau's sons' names are Arabic, is what they're telling you. They're not white man names like Matthew and John and all that. Okay, a South Arabian would have but little difficulty in understanding the first verse of Hebrew Genesis. And this is why we need to understand we would understand that whole concept of speaking in Hebrew, because like the word red is not a Hebrew word. You would need to get it in the Hebrew, which is admoni, which is red like earth. When it says Esau came out red, it wasn't talking about red like in white man red, or they look like the white man. No. It's foolishness. The Most High shall bring a nation against you from far, from the end of the earth. Remember, East Japheth's seed, they're scattered towards the end of the earth. As swift as the eagle flieth, a nation, here's the key, whose tongue, meaning language, thou shalt not understand. So who came against us that we would not understand? And we're not even talking about as of recently with the Europeans coming against us and we not understanding their language. Let's pause on that. Who did the Most High bring against Israel in the land, against them, that we would not understand their language? Let's get it. So we really doing a scholarship work here today, boy. Woo! Back in Josephus, the laws of the Jews to be translated into the Greek tongue, because that's who we dealing with, right? The Greek. There were many books of laws among the Jews worthy of inquiring after and worthy of the king's library, but which being written in characters and in a dialect of their own, they were not from the seed of Esau, or else they would understand that language, will cause no small pains in getting them translated into the Greek tongue, because they were not from that lineage. I have determined to procure an interpretation of your law and to have it translated out of Hebrew into Greek, because these people did not speak the language of the Most High's people. That's why the Most High said he would bring a nation against us from far, whose tongue we would not understand, and of course they wouldn't understand ours. That's why they would need to translate it. Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, since we're dealing with the Greek tongue or Greek language, was a major branch of the Indo-European language. Japheth's seed, which is the presumed parent of all the languages of Europe. And we know English is a West Germanic language. Okay, it is not a Semitic tongue. It is not Hebrew. Okay, connecting with the Greek language, which has nothing to do with Esau. Again, Esau's not the father of these people because they've been around before Esau. And their language has nothing in connection with Esau's language. Again, we back in the book, Babylon and Timbuktu. Just make a connection here. A German by nation, saw him. Basically, he was trying to speak to Agrippa and asked a soldier, who's that man? He was informed that his name was Agrippa and that he was by nation a Jew and one of the principal men of that nation. He asked leave of the soldier to whom he was bound to let him come near to him to speak with him. He said thus to him by an interpreter. So to speak with this German, to speak with Agrippa, he needed an interpreter. Hence, the Germans today, they do not speak a Hebrew tongue. Confirmation right here. They would need an interpreter. So the white man is not, we know the white man today speaks this German language, which is English, a West Germanic language. They would be, if they were Esau, they would be able to speak with a Jew. Speak to them in Hebrew. So this kills it right here. He needed an interpreter. Esau would not need an interpreter to speak with his brethren, with the Jews. They've been talking with each other. So again, foolishness exposed. Yes, sir. We bringing in more scholarship. Hebrewisms of West Africa. Even they understand this. Within 100 years of their settlement, Hebrew and Aramaic had become to the Jews a strange language. Why? And they spoke and thought in Greek because the Greeks took over. We're going to get into that too. Hence, it was necessary to have an authoritative Greek translation of the Holy Scriptures. And the first great step in the Jewish Hellenistic development is marked by the Septuagint version of the Bible. Hello. Again, killer.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Lang Focus channel and my name is Paul. How did Greek influence English? That is the question. As I mentioned in my recent video on the Greek language, Greek is a language that has influenced many others, including English. The most remarkable way that Greek has influenced English is in its vocabulary. In my previous video, I briefly mentioned that around 6% of the vocabulary of English is of Greek origin, but that some estimates reach as high as 12 or 15%. This depends on how you measure it. Some Greek words were borrowed directly from Greek into English. Some of these were borrowed early in the history of English, like church, from the Greek word kudiakon, which entered Old English as chirche. And some were borrowed later in the early modern English period. For example, autonomy. This word entered English directly from ancient Greek, autonomia, in the 1620s. But a larger number of Greek words entered English indirectly through Latin or through Latin then French. For example, museum. This comes from the Latin word museum, meaning library or study. And that comes from the ancient Greek word museon, which meant place of study, library, museum, or school of art or poetry. And if we go back even further to the original meaning of the ancient Greek word, it meant the seat or shrine of the muses.
How many ways can you skin a cat? How many ways can I expose this thing here? Page 29. The Greeks passed their alphabet to the Romans, and the Romans transmitted it to the German Anglo-Saxon tribes. Then it was brought to the British Isles. That's what they were saying. This is the forefather, basically the foreparent of these languages. The Negro question, making more connections to this language here. Check what he says here. The Edomite Aristobulus looks just like the black Israelites in the image because he was black. See, scholars understand that, but we the only ones on this foolishness, man. The uneducated ones. That's following these devils. Jews revolted against the Roman Empire in 70 AD under Vespasian and Titus Caesar. I found a coin that Vespasian had minted to commemorate his defeat. Okay, captive Judah, Iuda, okay, with the I here. That's how they spelled it. Now, the way they spelled Judea here is the same way they spelled it in the, let me bring this in, I showed y'all this before, 1611 King James Bible here. Okay, Luke chapter 21. Then let them which are in Edea, you see that? How they spelled it? Same way they spelled it here on the coin. Okay, and this is the English right here. So this is not Esau's language. All right, they minted the coin like that, the Greeks. And then we see it here in the Bible, how they spelled it, confirming this English and Greek connection, that these people are not the seed of Esau that translated these books. They have no connection with the seed of Esau. And it's right there for you. But we are blind. We need to wake up. Josephus had an issue with speaking in the Greek. For those of my own nation freely acknowledge that I far exceed them in the learning belonging to the Jews. He was a wise man. He exceeds his own people. I have also taken a great deal of pains to obtain the learning of the Greeks. So he, being a Hebrew, understanding in the Hebrew, had difficulty learning of the Greeks and understand the elements of the Greek language. Although I have so long accustomed myself to speak our own tongue that I cannot pronounce Greek with sufficient exactness. So again, being a Hebrew, not speaking his own Hebrew tongue, he had difficulty speaking the Greek tongue. Mind you, the Greeks had conquered them, took over. This wasn't a seed of Esau. Esau spoke the same language. Esau wouldn't have a problem communicating with Flavius Josephus. Okay? So right there, confirmation. And the Most High said he would bring a nation against us whose tongue we would not understand. And Flavius Josephus had trouble himself trying to understand the Greek tongue. And that's why the Greeks were trying to interpret the laws of the Hebrews, because they didn't understand their tongue. That wasn't Esau. I will be breaking down who is the white man. We talking science, language, all these different things. So much scholarship, it's not even funny. Okay? The white man is not the biblical Esau. Okay? But I expose and I prove all things. If you would like to watch this full lesson, please hit the link in the description below and join my online school now. On that note, I'm going to say peace and shalom. Blessings to everyone.